Get ready for an uplifting experience with Coached Soul. Join us as we bring you the dynamic duo of Steve Hudgens, a licensed professional counselor, and Kenya Evelyn, a transformational leadership coach. Together, they'll guide you through engaging episodes filled with valuable insights and actionable tips on mental health, relationships, self-care, emotional well-being, and personal growth. Coached Soul is your go-to podcast for empowering discussions that will help you thrive. So let's get started and welcome our hosts, Steve and Kenya.
All right. We had a great podcast last week. Well, I think it was great.
I loved that conversation. Man, nothing fuels me up more than talking about truth. Let's pour truth everywhere, Steve. Come on. Woo!
It's searching that truth. And how often do we have that veil of unbelief or the lies that we tell ourselves that we believe in? And we talked about fear, and we kind of, left a cliffhanger there that I like to bring into the segue of with fear, what do? We tell ourselves lies. And so we become afraid. Well, that worm is going to hurt me because it looks like a snake.
100%.
Is it really? Is it the opposite?
So I would like to review. I would like
Sure.
to review a few things. Fear is part of a core emotional feeling wheel. If you're a human like me right now, you will experience love.
Right.
You will experience excitement or joy. You will experience sadness. You will experience fear. It's part of a human natural emotional wheel, and a lot of breakdowns of that, right? Love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, fruits of the Spirit. They're all part of the experience of being in this body. So the number one thing that we do when we experience anything, let's talk about doing, then we talk about being, all the above, is you go back to love. You go back to accepting whatever feeling is going on. Accepting doesn't mean I welcome you to stay and to create roots. That's not accepting. That is indulging.
Mm-hmm.
Accepting means I don't make myself wrong or bad for feeling fear, frustrated, angry, and, all the normal, natural human feelings. All feelings is information. And now you get to design what feelings do you really want to experience more of. And then you cultivate those feelings, which is cultivate your light on a frequency base by generating that experiences that brings you more light.
It's interesting because when we think about this concept, it's also going back and challenging the way that we were brought up, the old messaging that comes into play. Kids are to be seen, not heard. It was a concept that I grew up on, and I'm like, why not let kids be seen? I learn more from kids because the world is not tainted like an adult world is because of the fears and the lies that we told ourselves. Self-deception it can run rampant. It's like Courtney Warren, Dr. Warren did a TED talk on the dishonesty of the lies that we tell ourselves. And one of the things she says, we lie to reflect our aspirational goals.
Wow.
Or we lie to uphold social ideals, or we lie about the most important life choices, such as why we married who we did, or chose our given career path. And so it also creeps up in Christianity. It's that false statement that I hear all the time. Well, God doesn't give us any more than we can handle. Well, wait a minute. That is a lie, because there's two scriptures that are being mixed. So faith-based listeners and anybody else wants to challenge the scripture, it's found in 1 Corinthians 10:13, I believe, where it says that no temptation has overtaken you. God's not going to allow you to be tempted beyond what you're capable of, but provides a way out. Now, the complementary twist that comes with it comes in Second Corinthians chapter 1. I believe it's verse 8 or somewhere in there that talks about Paul was on his trip to Asia. And it says, look, we've been perplexed. We've been just hammered hard that God gave us more than what we were able to carry. That's so much that we despise life in itself.
Wow.
So it's about finding truth among a message that seems to be true. So it's how do we work, or what are some things that we can do, Kenya, to work with truth and stop telling lies to ourselves?
Mhm. I love this so much. I heard a ton of lies, right? When I am sitting here asking for Steve to give me a reflection of me that I like, I'm literally depending on you to love myself. Please tell me that my work is okay. Please tell me that my hair is okay. Please, on a subconscious level, that's what we do when we seek approval of any kind. So to live a life of truth is to really wake up. This is for me. This is my own self-care routine. I'm putting it out there because I have mastered. Actually, we talked about this prior to recording, dear listeners, that my choice is to only share the things that I have processed. Now, every now and then, I would allow myself to process something out loud because it just came through that moment, or right before we record a podcast, I had some triggers with my kids or whatever happened, and I bring it to my authenticity. The way I chose to live my truth is to always speak topics that the frequency of Steve and I it matches. The truth of what we're speaking right now is the truth of what we've been dealing with through the weeks in our different practices and in my household and all the things. So the number one routine that I have for truth is to look in the mirror and to accept what I see without looking at where my flaws are. And I'm speaking with every woman out there. I know you're gonna get me. You know, before, first thing in the morning, after you do the bathroom thing, you change your clothes, you look in the mirror and like, I wish I was this down. I wish I was, this was a little harder. I wish, you go through all your wish list, which is you talking to your own body, me talking to my own body in a way that is less than love.
But sometimes,
go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, sometimes I think that we set ourselves up for failure too.
If that is how you start your day, what do you think the frequency is?
Right.
That is not, acceptance is another word for love. Okay, so the first time I heard this, because I can hear other people, depending on where you are in the spectrum of the journey, I can hear some questions like, how am I supposed to accept this? This is crap. How am I supposed to, his behavior, she does this, and my mother-in-law, my mom this, my sister, whatever. How am I supposed to accept? It's very simple. Everything that is in your field is a lesson, regardless of your line of thought. You can call this Earth School. You can call this is my one lifetime or many lifetime. I don't care what you believe. This is all information. It's part of your journey. It's part of your becoming.
Right.
But if you live on your becoming, God will only give it the stuff that you quote, you're not living in the now. So what acceptance does, it brings you back to the present moment where truth lives here and now. Fear, why is it false? We talk about false experience appearing real because it doesn't exist. Fear is based on past experience, that you're projecting over the future, which creates anxiety of what ifs. But what if doesn't exist? It
I want
only
to.
exists now. So please
Oh,
let me just
yeah.
finish this thought. When you're in the mirror and you know that you're 10 pounds overweight, but you accept it's like, you know what? You're good and you're
Mm.
beautiful just the way you are. And I get to choose to keep improving, but I am great now. It's different.
No, and I'm glad you finished that because that's where I was going to go with this, is that I was processing what you said earlier, and I'm like, how can we be able to flush this out even further by digging deeper? Because some exciting things are going to happen to this podcast coming up. And so we're changing the name and the logo soon. I don't want to go much into details, but I
Dun, 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 dun,
created,
dun, dun.
right? I was able to create a logo based upon information, the feedback that was given back to me.
Beautiful.
So the logo I created wasn't that I was seeking approval, because I already knew I liked it. But I also knew when I was asking that I need to accept criticism coming back. So I sent the logo down to my cousin, and he's like, "Explain this."
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, "Isn't it obvious?" It was obvious to me, but not to him.
Yes.
But if I lived in the fear and telling myself a lie, I would have pushed back against his criticism about him not understanding.
Sure.
But to accept where I'm at in the moment that in the process that I was asking what message is this coming across as, so that he can give me the positive feedback or any kind of feedback. And he was right. There was a misunderstanding about the branding within the logo. So I went back and I thought about it, and I just changed three words that are already there to three different words, and he got it. So it's learning that when we ask a specific question, are we willing to accept the good, the bad, and the ugly, and not live in denial? Well, that just person doesn't love me. That person doesn't like me because of what they said to me. They're just jealous. So how do you work with those frequencies, Kenya, about self-deception and that, because in lying to ourselves, we get into denial, rationalization, projection, polarized thinking, emotional reasoning, overgeneralization. I mean, these are the lies that we tell ourselves every day.
Is to recognize that those are lies. So here's my homework number one, pen and paper, or not if you're driving. What do you wish to hear? What is the feedback that you're craving? What resonates true? What would light up your day? It could be as silly as, I love your eyes. Ooh, your smile is incredible. Or the tone of your voice really does something. Whatever it is, give it to yourself.
Right.
Give it to yourself. So when I decided to put me first, it was a decision of breaking a generational curse of mothers across all time and space, as long as I can go, mother, grandmother, great-grandmother, of giving from a place of sacrificial giving, which they're not living for themselves. They're living as martyrs. As I give everything to my children, that means I'm a great mom. As I put myself last on the list, or not even make it to the list, is kids and husbands, communities, whatever. That means I'm a good person.
Right.
And when I woke up to the reality that I was not vicariously living, but I was just repeating. I was repeating that generational frequency, really ingrained in my honestly, in my DNA, in all my surroundings. And then of course I would attract people that would do the same thing in my community. And I was like, wait a second, I don't want my daughter to repeat that. I want my daughter and my boys, but especially my daughter, because she's the one that's going to become a mama, to come from a place of complete overflow. And dear listeners, this might be so elementary or mind-blowing. Are you ready? You can only be in overflow if every time you give, you receive double. Double or more. Otherwise, the math is equal. It's not overflow. If you give one and receive one, if you speak truth and receive truth, you're not in overflow. But if every time you give, you receive double or triple or fourth, you are in overflow. Now, I don't care how you're languaging this. Okay, and are you talking about truth, fear? Are you talking about motherhood, give and receive? Are you talking about fatherhood? I'm talking about being a human. It never happens separately. It's all connected. Work, life, house, kids, single or married, it's all connected. How you're doing things, how you do everything. So if you're standing up to hear truth and ask God and divine guidance to show you light, he will also show you shadow, because it comes together.
You know, what you're resonating with me is what I would like to also tie in with our last podcast on fear, to conquer that, to recognize the lies that we tell ourselves, is to be brave enough to confront our reality.
There we go.
It because we frequently lie to ourselves, like, well, I'm this way because it's my upbringing, but I'm deferring my responsibility for my choices.
There is no responsibility, dear. I hear
Right.
Zero responsibility.
Right.
This is just the way I am, you know, take it or leave it. Beautiful. Do you want to recreate the results of your parents, your great grandparents? And I hold this sacred with you, because I received a lot of gifts from my parents and grandparents, but I'm specifically talking about the things that doesn't work and we keep repeating out of unawareness. So here's step number one: become aware. If you're not aware, you're gonna, in your second homework, ask 3 people around you. They will give you feedback, and now you get to receive it.
So in preparation for teaching at Rogers State University, I'm putting together some curriculum that I think is important, especially as therapists, and to look at things outside of the box of thinking. I saw recently a clip which I'm using in this class, and I want to use it here. It comes from NBC TV show The Irrational. Here he is. He's a professor that's teaching, but also helps the police. And he plays this clip that says, "That is embarrassing." And it's a chant that continues on and on. And he says, "I want you to identify, what is it that you're hearing?" And they put up what they hear, because they're resonating what they see on the screen. He says, "Now what I want you to do is I'm going to throw up phrases that kind of match what we're hearing. Identify." So he throws up, "That's my receipt. This is different ones." And by the end of it, all of them agreed what they saw and what they were hearing. Bart Simpson is bouncing. That is embarrassing. And he talks about that. What we see is it's the signals into our brain that creates a false sense of reality. It's not our reality. And that's how lies kind of creep into ourselves. So it's taking that time to process, not jumping on the bandwagon. Oh my gosh, the sky's falling in, like Chicken Little story would be. But it's taking that time to be able to confront, what is my reality? Because oftentimes, I mean, how many times, magic, I'm at a magic show.
And will you be courageous
There you
to
go.
really be responsible for that creation. You and I, and you, my darling listeners, are responsible for the creation of your daily repeating patterns or new patterns.
Right.
It's very simple. Just look at the results. Everything is information. And I can tell you now that once you are courageous to say, I want change, and the change I want is XYZ, get clear. I want more connection. I want intimacy. It's not a homework of doing, it's a being.
Right.
I want to receive. For all the mothers out there, 99% of us carry one pattern: givers and not receivers.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, here's the problem. It's what I just said is made up. There is no, the energy of give is the energy of receive. It's the give and receive. When you say, I'm a really, you know what, Steve? I am really good at giving, not so good at receiving. That actually is a lie in itself, because it's
Yes,
the
it
same
is.
frequency. It's the same frequency. It just means it's 360 degrees. It's a
Right.
dance of giving and receiving. Is a circuit. It's the entire spectrum of the energy flowing in your body is the frequency of giving and receiving. If you say you're blocking it, which doesn't mean you're just blocking the receiving, you're creating disease in your physical body. That means you stop breathing, right? You breathe shallower. It shows up in skin issues. It shows up, you're blocking it. You're blocking because of something else. We'll talk about in another podcast. It's something else from the past. It's trauma
Well,
response,
we
but
got
it is
about
not the
probably
flow.
about 5 minutes, Kenya, and
Yes.
what you're sharing is the only way that I try to help identify with things and try to connect with our audience is saying, hey, this is what I dealt with. So recently, I went through a branding strategist to try to start branding myself because of the different perspectives of what I bring into therapy and the holistic viewpoints. And so it's interesting that I saw myself one way, that, of where I'm at. But the 5 different people that I chose for the strategist to talk to gave me a whole new perspective,
Mm.
that words were like elegant,
Mm.
thinker outside the box. I can't remember some of the other words that we're using. And I'm like, how do you feel about these words? I mean, she gave me a list of at least 20 words, and I'm like,
Wow.
I don't know how to receive this. And I think I know it comes from my past about that false lie that I told myself, I'm not good enough.
Wow. There we go.
And so I soaked that in, not as a way to just elevate and blow up my head and think, oh, now I can become egotistical and look at me. And no, it keeps me humble because I know where my past came from. But it feels good to know that outsiders see me different than my own perspective. And when we can be able to heal is when we are able to start confronting the reality that's there. And I am appreciative of you because you were one of the people that I gave a name to. Sorry to throw you out there on the bus, but it's a unique perspective. We think about funerals and everybody comes to a funeral. Oh, what a nice guy, da 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 da. What a nice girl, da 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 da. But we don't do this when people are alive.
Mm.
In order to brand yourself, you want to know what the collective is, what's being said.
What is the perception? Yes.
That is the perception.
And I don't mind going deeper, so we
Please
can
do.
offer this complete truth to the listeners. I was one of Steve's 5 people, and Steve was one of my 5 people.
Right.
because we see each other that way. I care for the perspective that you have, the image that you have over me, because I believe that your place is a place of neutrality. Why am I saying this? Because I would not go around, dear listeners, asking anyone for feedback. Make sure that the people that you're receiving that feedback, so you know what is the image that you're actually portraying out there, is people that actually care for you, and that will come from a place of neutrality and love. Because unhealed people spread disease. And people that are healed or in the path of healing spread healing and love and a neutral reflection.
Well, you
So
know
that
my
is
background, right?
exactly. So
Right.
for you to go around and say, I would want to know if I would work with a branding strategy. By the way, I have no problem to leave her link here at some point. If somebody, if you're building your business, or, you know, I would give a shout out to Tora every day of the week. She's amazing. She's helping us
Agree.
to do this. The second thing I want to say is, even if you don't have a brand or a business, is it helpful for your own master of self to know how your children perceive you? And I'm going to raise my hand and say it is. I will not ask my kids for feedback on my branding, if you will. But the other day, I was in the car, and this was it was this year, so a few months ago. And my kids were like, they're reflecting to me how much I've changed. It's like,
Mhm.
Mommy, you don't scream anymore. It's nice to just be able to talk to you.
Mhm.
And what I heard them saying is, I am not as reactive as once I was.
Right.
Which doesn't mean I don't ever scream, y'all. Okay, I'm still human. So notice what frequencies, what are you spreading? Notice what comes back to you as feedback. But most important, know that when you're open to receive the reflection from other people, you also know who you are first.
You know, that's important. And to close this out, Kenya, it is important to know who you are. And people like, well, you stacked up and got what you wanted. No, I didn't. I asked a family member that goes and remembers me when I was little about who I am. I asked a friend who has been with me in my cancerous times and the difficulties
That's
of
right.
life, that you know, even to the disparity of life itself, she was there.
Mm.
I have an old client who that wanted to just stay in touch,
Yes,
and so that gave a different perspective.
that's right.
You gave a perspective as like a coworker, a podcaster working with me. You know who I am, and then finally, I was able to get a member of where I attend church to give a different perspective. I did this because I wanted to know, am I consistent and congruent throughout my life? And if I'm not, it allows me an opportunity to grow where I'm weak in. And that's what I want to challenge our listeners. It's go beyond the fear by confronting the reality, but at the same time, not be afraid of truth, because truth has an ability to uplift, to evolve. When I think about evolving, I think of a crab coming out of its shell and creating a new shell. Evolving, or, you know, it's at that snake shedding the old skin and coming out to a new growth. That's
Right.
where we need to grow as people. So be mindful about the lies that you tell yourself, and have a great week, because you are worth it, whether you believe it or not. That is the truth. You are worth it. Have a great week.
Thank you for joining us on this episode of Coached Soul, where we aim to empower and uplift you on your journey towards personal growth and well-being. Remember, as you navigate through life, you don't have to do it alone. We encourage you to reach out to professionals, seek support from loved ones, and take the time to prioritize your own well-being. Stay tuned for future episodes filled with even more valuable insights and actionable tips. Remember, you have the power to thrive. And with Coach It Soul by your side, anything is possible. Until next time, take care, stay empowered, and keep shining your brightest light.